you. All right, so before moving on to the application portion of this meeting, I'd like to maybe just cover quickly the mandate of the committee. The Committee of Adjustment derives its jurisdiction and authority from the Planning Act. The committee is responsible for considering applications which seek to authorize the following: minor variances from provisions of the town's zoning bylaw, extensions, enlargements, or variations of the legal non-conforming use of any land, building, or structure, permitting the use of any land, building, or structure for any purpose that, in the opinion of the committee, conforms within the provisions of the zoning bylaw, where the uses permitted in the zoning bylaw are defined in general terms. Consent to sever a new lot from an existing lot, consent to alter the existing boundaries of a lot, such as lot additions and lot line adjustments, consent to register rights of way and easements over land, consent to sell, mortgage, charge, or enter into any agreement for more than 21 years for a portion of land, and validation of land title when there has been an error in the description of land. When considering these minor variances, the committee is to assess whether the general intent and purpose of both the Town of Ajax official plan and zoning bylaw is being maintained, the proposal is desirable for the appropriate development and/or use of the subject land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature. When considering consents, the committee must ensure proposals conform to the Region of Durham and Town of Ajax official plans and have regard to the matters outlined under the Planning Act. In all scenarios, the committee must ensure consistency with the in effect provincial policy, statements, and conformity with the in effect provincial plans. The process for tonight's meetings will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant and/or agent will be called upon and will be asked to provide a brief description of the minor variance and/or consent application that they have applied for. The committee members may ask questions of the applicant and/or agent, after which anyone with a direct interest in the application will be given the opportunity to speak either for or against the application. Once a motion is put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant and/or agent or anyone else having interest in the application. After a decision is made, a notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. The decision of the committee may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant or a specified person or public body, as outlined in the Planning Act. Please note that third-party appeals are not permitted. The decision will become final and binding if no appeals are received during that 20-day appeal period. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the 20-day appeal period. However, please note no permits or approvals will be issued until the appeal period is over and the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present at all times. Let me now take a moment to introduce you to the committee members presiding over the procedures this evening. To my immediate right is Tomas Baca. Next to Tomas is Amanda Dunn, Bernadette Santiago, and on virtually attending is Ken Elliott. Good evening, Ken. And I'm the chair of the committee, Wasif Ahmed. And we also have here to my immediate left town staff, technical staff, and Eric Simpson, Supervisor in Development and Committee of Adjustment, and Henry Sang, who's the Secretary and Treasurer. We'd like to move into the next item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the December 11th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Go ahead, Tomas.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, recognize. Bernadette as the seconder. Okay. And any discussion on the motion? Okay, then I'll look for a vote. And the vote has been carried, so we have now adopted the meeting minutes from last December's meeting. Now, moving into the application portion of this evening's meeting, well, the first one that you see, again, for those of you in the room on the screen, is the minor variance application A3524 for 31 Glenny Drive. This is to permit uncovered steps leading to a below-grade entrance within the west interior side yard with a minimum setback of 0.1 meters from the west interior side lot line. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this application? Okay. You are here? Can I just get you to come to the podium, sir, please? Okay, perfect. Mr. Watts, can you, have you received a copy of this recommendation report? Okay, so what you'll notice is that the town staff is proposing that we approve this application subject to the 6 conditions on the board there. So I'll read them out loud just for everybody's benefit. That the subject variance applies only to the property municipally known as 31 Glenny, substantially in accordance with the drawing submitted within the minor's variance application, or this decision shall become null and void. That an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to and from the uncovered steps be maintained at all times on the subject property. That number 3, that an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel from the rear yard be maintained at all times on the subject property. Number 4, that any existing utilities be relocated as necessary in consultation with the applicable utility agencies and the town to a location that does not impede access to or from the uncovered steps. That number 5, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, and number 6, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town. Contravening any one of these 6 steps will make the decision that's made here today null and void. Are you agreeable to all 6 conditions? I agree with it. Okay. Could you maybe spend a couple of minutes and just tell us a little bit about your project, just for the committee?
I just would like to prepare it so that I could get the regulated permit to do what I need to do there.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And the work hasn't yet started, correct? No. Okay. Perfect. So let me, so I'm going to hold you right there. I'm going to just look to my committee members to see if they have any questions for the application. Yeah, Bernadette?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not so much a question, I just wanted to confirm that notice was served.
Thank you.
Notice was served and no correspondence was received.
Okay. Thank you. Good catch. Nobody else? Okay. All right, sir. I'm going to have you just take a seat. Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anybody else here to speak either for or against the application? And again, we're on application A3524 for Glenny Drive. Okay. Yes, sir. Get you to come up to the podium. You can do it after. I'll just get your name first, just keep the conversation going.
Okay. I'm from 39 Glenny Drive.
Okay. That makes you the neighbor, I assume, next door.
Not close neighbor, but 2 blocks away. I would like to know if the town could give homeowners where the utility pass through, because I have no documents on where the utility pass, like the power and the bell and the street light and the Rogers. So that's my question. I would like to get a piece of document or paper showing me where these things go through.
Yeah, I know there's a provincial service that's available to all homeowners. I know I've called them personally in the past as well, that will come out and actually do all the locates for you. That includes your gas, your if there's any electricity, gas line electricity, telecom services are included as part of Rogers, Bell, et cetera. So I know there's a number that you can call that they'll actually come in and they'll actually flag. You may see that sometimes in people's neighborhoods if people are getting any work done,
Yeah,
landscaping.
for
or
digging,
for digging, yes. So, but it's the same thing, right? So, because when you're doing the digging, you're trying to get everything located, right? So I think that's what you're asking for?
Yeah, I would be glad if somebody could, show me on my floor plan the layout of the house where these lines go. That in the future, if I want to do some side or extend my window, then I could know where
Okay.
not to dig and who could I call about this.
Okay. I don't, Eric?
Yeah, through the chair. So like the chair had mentioned, we don't do utility coordination for you, but if we had infrastructure that was on your property and there is an easement, we could disclose that to you. Are you looking just for the building plans of your property, like from the building permit?
Say that again, please.
Are you looking for the original floor plans of your house?
Oh,
like,
I have that, but
okay.
I have
You just
that.
the outside
Just
utilities.
the outside, we don't know where
Gotcha.
they.
Yeah, you'd have to go through the Ontario One Call, like the DIG service, and you could get it through that. But we can look to see if we have any infrastructure like servicing that goes up your side yard, and then we could give that to you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, last call for anybody that's here to either speak for or against the application in front of us on 31 Glenny. Okay, seeing none, then I'll look for a motion. Bernadette?
I move that we approve minor variance application A35-24, subject to the conditions of the staff report, as the proposal is considered minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands, and finally, is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, motion recognized. Can I get a seconder? Amanda? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, then I'll look for a vote. Okay, so the vote has been carried, sir, and your application for 31 Glenny has been approved. It will be subject to that 20-day appeal period I was talking about at the beginning, amongst all that other stuff I was covering. So it'll be subject to about 20 days of appeal, and then the town staff will be in notification to you. All right, perfect. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right, the next application on the agenda is application A3624, I believe, for 75 Cluett Drive. And this application is seeking to permit uncovered steps leading to a below-grade entrance within the west interior side lot line with a minimum setback of 0.1 meters. Sorry, I'm just making sure I'm on the right one. Perfect. And do we have anybody here to speak either on behalf of this particular application? Again, we're at 75 Cluett Drive. Good evening, ma'am. Can I get you to maybe come up? And just while you're doing that, Eric, if you can confirm whether notice was served and whether any responses were received?
Mr. Chair, notice was served and no responses were received.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good.
Perfect. Could I maybe just start with your name?
Suzanne Wells.
Okay, good evening. And so Suzanne, can you, you'll probably notice on the screen, there's a report up here. Can you, first of all, just confirm that you've seen this report before, you received it?
I have.
Okay, perfect. Just for everybody's benefit, I'm just going to read out the 6 conditions that are outlined in this report. And they are that the subject variance applies only to the property municipally known as 75 Cluett. And it's substantially in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with this application. Number 2, that the unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to and from the uncovered steps be maintained at all times on the subject property. That an unobstructed pedestrian path of to and from the rear yard be maintained at all times. That an existing utilities be relocated as necessary in consultation with the applicable utility agencies and the town to a location that does not impede access to or from the uncovered steps. That the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, and that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town or this decision or any contravention of any one of these conditions will render the decision null and void. Do you acknowledge that you're okay with all 6 of these conditions?
I am okay with all 6 of them.
Okay, perfect. Could you, Ms. Wells, just maybe tell us a little bit about the project?
Yeah, we're in the process of changing or installing a legal basement apartment. And when we put the door in, the architect had drawn the door at ground level. And once the door went in, we discovered that it needed to be significantly below ground
Right.
level, therefore requiring steps down to it and steps up through the backyard.
Okay, got it. All right, perfect, thank you. I'll look to the committee to see if they have any questions for the applicant. Okay, seeing none. All right, thank you, Ms. Wells. I'll look for anybody else in the audience that's either here to speak for or against this application. We're again on 75 Cluett Drive. Okay, seeing none, nobody online either. Perfect. All right, then I will look for a motion. Thomas?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve application A36-24, subject to all staff conditions on the basis that it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, motion acknowledged. Can I get a seconder? Bernadette? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, then I'll look for a vote. And the vote has been carried unanimously, Ms. Wells, so your application here has been granted. It'll now be subject to that 20-day appeal period I mentioned at the top. And after that, you can still, during that period, you can still apply for your building permits and all those things, but nothing will get acknowledged or you won't receive any approvals until that appeal period is over. Okay? All right, thank you. Have a good evening. All right, next one is application A125, I believe, at 777 Bailey. Amanda, I think this is the one that you have a conflict. Is there still a back room that's open?
Sorry, say that again?
Amanda's got a disclosure.
Yes, she can stay there. She just won't vote.
That's it?
Yeah, and it may default to a no, but it won't count as a vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, so this particular application was submitted by the Biglieri Group. Is there anybody here to speak for, on behalf of this application this evening?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Good evening. So I'm assuming, sorry, it's Mallory Neves? Okay.
Okay.
So Ms. Neves, I'm assuming that you've already received a report that the staff and myself are looking at here in council chambers that does recommend approval for this application based on the following 2 conditions: that the subject variance applies only to the proposed development of the subject property through the site plan application SPA 125, and substantially in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with this minor variance application. And that that the loading spaces be screened through the use of landscape elements and features to the satisfaction of the town, also through the site plan amendment application. Do you acknowledge both these conditions, and are you okay with those?
Yes, we're good with them, Mr. Chair. We acknowledge them.
Okay, perfect. And before I hand over the floor to you to perhaps tell us a little bit about the project, I'll just ask Eric whether notice was served on this application.
Notice was served and no responses were received, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Neves, I'll hand the floor over to you, and perhaps you can walk the committee through a little bit about the project.
Great, thank you. So good evening to the chair, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Mallory Nieves. I'm an associate at the Biglieri Group, and I'll be providing a brief presentation on the proposed minor variance application. We also have a representative from the landowner here tonight, Mr. Aaron Quad. So if any questions come up, he's also available to answer. Next slide. So the site is located at the southwest corner of Bailey Street West and Church Street South. It's surrounded by other industrial uses. The site currently contains a Volkswagen warehouse and some storage areas at the rear. Next slide. So as part of the active site plan application, a 10,726 meters square warehouse expansion is proposed to the rear of the existing building. And this will include 16 new loading spaces facing Church Street. A new driveway is also proposed off Church Street to access said loading spaces. Next slide. This slide shows the proposed addition in gray to show the relationship between the existing building in white there and the proposed addition, just at a high level, just to give you an idea of the scale of the addition. Next slide. So section 513.3 prohibits loading spaces in exterior side yards, and as such a variance is requested to allow the loading spaces where proposed. Next slide. So this slide here shows a more zoomed in view of the proposed loading spaces and the proposed access to Church Street South. So you can see that they're located within the exterior side yard there and in proximity of the new access. Next slide. So in order to mitigate visual impacts of the loading spaces on the public realm, plantings are proposed along Church Street. Next slide. This slide shows the 14 new deciduous and coniferous trees to be planted, which will aid in screening the loading spaces from view. And we did want to note that we did receive comments with our first site plan application to the town about enhancing the plantings in that area. And this plan here represents the enhanced planting. So we've actually added more than what we first proposed to staff through the first application. Next slide. So I won't go through all of the items here. They are outlined in our rationale that we provided to staff, but we believe that the proposal meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act for a variety of reasons. The proposed loading spaces have a generous setback from the exterior side lot line, more so than the existing building. Existing screening is provided, as I mentioned, through the landscaping. It'll also be partially screened by the existing building, and there's also no public sidewalks on Church Street, which assists in it not being as exposed to the public realm. In addition, the proposal is in conformity with the employment area urban design guidelines. There's a few other points there, but I won't go over every one, but that kind of summarizes our rationale. Next slide. And yeah, again, just what I said about the not a lot of or very minimal impact on the public realm. So that's why we think this variance is justified. Next slide. So please let me know if you have any questions. We're thankful to staff for the recommendation report, and we support the conditions. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Look to committee members for any questions. No? Okay. Is there anybody else here to either speak for or against this application? Again, we're on A125 for 777 Bailey Street West. No? Nobody online? Okay. All right, then I will look for a motion. Bernadette?
I move minor variance application A125 be approved, subject to the 2 conditions contained in the staff report, as the proposal is considered minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, motion acknowledged. Can I get a seconder? Tomas, thank you. And is there any discussion on the motion as presented? Okay, seeing none, then I will look for a vote. Okay, so the vote has been carried, Ms. Nevis. I'm assuming you can see the screen. So it'll now be subject to the 20-day appeal period with the OLT.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for being here. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Before we move forward to the next application, I'd like to propose we just take a 5-minute breather. Can we do that? Is that okay? All right, so from a technical perspective, you'll stop.
And we are back.
Okay, perfect. I'd like to now recall this meeting back to order at 7:35. Appreciate you bearing with us. Next on the agenda is a consent application, item 5D on the agenda for those of you following along at home. This is a land division application. It spans across 4 land division applications and 2 minor variance applications, all in relation to 100 Heron Street, 101 Heron Street, 102 Heron Street, and 103 Heron Street. And there is a recommendation that the town staff has put together for the committee to ponder. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask with town staff whether notice was served on this application for the Heron Street addresses.
Mr. Chair, notice was served. There was the one piece of correspondence which was provided. I'll note that there was another one received. However, the comments were specific to the development proposal and not the applications before the committee, and were previously addressed by staff at the previous approval stage, so we did not include those ones.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And is there anybody here representing this application? Sir, if I could just get you to come up to the podium. We'll start with your name.
Good evening. My name is Chris Kokuros.
Okay, good evening, Chris. Chris, as you'll see that the town has put together some reading material for the committee, and I'm assuming you're also in receipt of
Yes.
this recommendation report, okay? And there are, obviously, it's subject to some conditions I'm going to read out for the audience at home, that the owner applicant submit a deposited reference plan to the satisfaction of the town, that the zoning non-compliances resulting from any proposed consents be brought into compliance, that the owner applicant submit additional environmental work in accordance with Durham Region Soil and Groundwater Assessment Protocol to the satisfaction of the town, that the lands to be added to 21 and 23 Harwood Avenue South from 100, 101, and 102 Heron Street through consent applications LD 1124, LD 1224, and LD 1324 be deeded in the same name of ownership as 21 and 23 Harwood Avenue South to ensure that only one legally conveyable parcel of land is created. Please note that proof must be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer that ownership of the lands will be identical, together with proof that any existing mortgages encumberancing the parcels of land will be discharged, that the lands from 103 Heron Street to be added to the lands to the north and west following the merging of such lands through consent applications LD 1124, LD 1224, and LD 1324 be deeded in the same name of ownership to ensure that only one legal conveyable parcel of land is created. Please note that proof must be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer that ownership of the lands will be identical, together with proof that any existing mortgages encumberancing the parcels of land would also be discharged. That subsection 53 subsection 50, subsection 3 or 5 of the Planning Act shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the lands subject to LD 1124 to LD 1424 inclusively, and that the owner applicant satisfy the conditions and requirements, financial and otherwise, of all external agencies or government authorities. That the Committee of Adjustments also have, I think, in terms of the different minor variance applications, A224 for 100 Heron Street, a minimum setback from the interior side lot line of 0 meters from an accessory building or structure, a minimum setback from exterior side lot line of 2.9 meters for a principal building. For minor variance application E325 for 101 Heron Street, a minimum setback from the south interior side lot line, of 0.4 meters for a principal building, and a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 6.3 meters for a principal building, and minor variance application for 103 Heron Street, application A425, that a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 0.0 meters for an accessory building or structure Also subject to the following conditions: that the subject variance applies only to the existing dwellings and accessories building structures on subject lands, municipally known as 100, 101, and 103 Heron Street, substantially in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with this application, that the owner applicant obtained final approval of consent applications LD 1124 to 1114, to LD 1424, or this decision shall become null and void. Do you acknowledge all of these conditions?
Yes, I do.
I was hoping you don't say no and ask me to repeat them. So thank you for not doing that. All right. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit about the project?
Yes, well, what we're constructing at the corner of Harwood and Mandrake is a high-density residential development. It comprises a 12-story building fronting onto Harwood, and then a 5-story seniors building fronting onto Mandrake. Now, the intention of this work tonight is to sever approximately 10 feet of the 4 residential properties that you've identified, and that will enable the seniors building to be constructed to a height of 5 stories. So that 10 feet of space will provide the ability for us to satisfy the 45-degree plane that's required from the planning department.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing and hearing none. Okay. Then I will just see if there's anybody else online. I don't see anybody here physically, but anybody online to speak either for or against the application? No? Okay. All right. Then I will look for a motion. Yep, Bernadette.
I move consent application LD 11 through LD 14 be approved subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. This motion has been made as proposed and complies with all applicable policies and plans affecting the subject lands. I understand that perhaps maybe there will be an amendment to the motion.
Okay, so I acknowledge your motion as is, and then we'll look to see whether there's any discussion on the motion.
I would like to add a condition in relation to the consent applications. The condition would be that the owner of 102 and 103 Heron Street demolish all or part of the existing accessory buildings and structures and remove all debris to the satisfaction of the chief building official of the town of Ajax. And this is in relation to staff's comments in the report that there is an existing garage and shed that will need to be relocated and to allow for the lot line adjustments.
Okay, noted. Bernadette, are you okay with that amendment to your motion?
I am.
Okay, perfect. Any discussion on the motion with the amendment by committee members? Okay, seeing none, then I will look for a vote on the consent applications. Okay. And so just from a protocol perspective, we do the consent applications first, and we're now going to do a vote on the minor variance application. So I'll look for a motion for the minor variance applications. Tomas?
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee approves applications A02-25, A03-25, and A04-25, subject to all staff conditions on the basis that it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property, and in keeping with the general intent and the purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Tomas. Motion recognized. Seconder? Bernadette? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, then I'll look for a vote Again, this is for the minor variance applications. And the vote has been carried. So both your applications this evening have been approved, subject to, I think there was an amendment made that the town staff can fill you in if you didn't catch that earlier. I think it's a relatively straightforward one. So they'll, the minor variance applications will now be subject to the 20-day appeal period with the Ontario Land Tribunal. Okay?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming up. All right. Now look for a, look to committee members to see if there's any other business or new business. All right, then I will look for a motion to adjourn. Bernadette?
I move that we adjourn this evening's meeting.
Okay, motion acknowledged. Can I get a seconder? Amanda? Thank you. And can I, any discussion on the motion? I know it's always, look for a vote then. And the motion has been carried. I'd like to now adjourn this meeting at 7:46 p.m. Thank you.